She was drowning. He saved her. It was a bright and warm summer afternoon at Lake Willow, a peaceful spot where the water glistened like glass under the sun. Families had come to enjoy the day. Children ran along the sandy shore, shrieking with laughter as their parents watched with smiles. Some were having picnics under colorful umbrellas, and a few teenagers were playing frisbee near the grassy areas. The air smelled faintly of sunscreen and fresh water, mixed with the earthy scent of the nearby forest. It was the kind of place where people came to relax, to forget about school, work, or the busy pace of everyday life. Emma Carter, a 23-year-old university student, had been looking forward to this day for weeks. The past semester had been stressful. She had spent long hours studying for exams, writing papers, and preparing presentations. Between her part-time job and her classes, she rarely had time for herself. When her friends suggested a trip to the lake, she had immediately agreed, desperate for a few hours of peace. Emma wasn't an expert swimmer, but she had always enjoyed being in the water. The calm waves and the sun on her skin made her feel free, as if all the stress of her life was melting away. She arrived at the lake mid-morning, carrying a small bag with a towel, sunscreen, and a water bottle. Her friends were already there, laughing and joking while setting up a picnic area under a large oak tree. They greeted her with excitement, and for a moment, Emma felt all the tension leave her body. She smiled genuinely, something she realized she hadn't done fully in weeks. After a quick chat and some light snacks, the group decided it was time to go swimming. The water looked inviting, sparkling under the sun. Emma carefully stepped into the lake, feeling the cool water lap against her ankles. It was refreshing, and she smiled as the water covered her feet and legs. The friends slowly waded deeper, splashing each other and laughing. Emma followed, keeping close to the shore at first. She enjoyed the feeling of the gentle current moving around her legs. She had always felt safe near the shore, but that day, she allowed herself to drift a little farther than usual, thinking the water looked calm enough. The lake had a few small boats tied to the docks, and the occasional ripple of a fish breaking the surface added a quiet charm to the scene. Birds flew overhead, their calls echoing softly in the background. Everything seemed perfect. Emma's friends were nearby, calling out jokes and laughing, unaware that something dangerous was about to happen. Emma felt the freedom of being in the water. She floated on her back for a few moments, looking up at the sky. The clouds were scattered and white, moving slowly as if they had nowhere to go. She felt calm, peaceful, almost weightless. Then, without warning, something changed. A stronger current, invisible until it was too late, tugged at her legs. Emma instinctively tried to paddle back toward the shallow area, but the water seemed to push her farther away. Her feet could no longer touch the bottom, and panic began to creep in. Her heart started beating faster, and a cold sweat ran down her back. She tried to call out to her friends, but the words came out as muffled gasps. The laughter and shouts around her suddenly felt far away, distant, like she was underwater even when she was. Emma's arms flailed as she tried to keep herself afloat. Each movement exhausted her more quickly. She had never experienced fear like this before. Her mind raced. What if she couldn't make it back? What if the current was too strong? The sun was still shining above her, but the warmth did nothing to calm the terror she felt. The once inviting lake had turned into something threatening. The gentle waves that had seemed so peaceful now felt like walls closing in around her. She tried to remember the swimming lessons she had taken as a child. Float on your back, keep calm, and call for help. But fear was stronger than memory. Her arms and legs moved erratically, and she felt herself slipping deeper into the water. Her chest tightened, and every breath became a struggle. Emma began to tire quickly. Panic, combined with exhaustion, made her movements less effective. For the first time in her life, she felt completely helpless. Her friends noticed something was wrong almost immediately. At first, they thought she was playing, laughing, and splashing, but when she didn't respond to their calls and her movements became frantic, alarm set in. One of them shouted for help, and the sound finally broke through the haze of fear that had enveloped Emma. But even then, the distance and the strength of the current made it hard for anyone to reach her in time. Emma struggled to keep her head above water. Each wave felt heavier, and each breath was harder to take. Her mind flashed with memories of her family, her childhood, and all the small moments she had taken for granted. She realized how fragile life could be. In those moments, she understood fear in a way she never had before. She was no longer thinking about homework, exams, or deadlines. All that mattered was surviving, just keeping herself alive one breath at a time. Meanwhile, someone else had been watching. Daniel Reyes, a 28-year-old construction worker, had come to the lake for a short break from his week of work. He often visited quiet places like this to relax and think. Daniel had grown up near water. He had learned to swim at an early age and spent much of his youth helping his younger cousins in similar situations. He knew how water could be calm one moment and dangerous the next. Daniel noticed Emma almost immediately. There was something in the way she moved, the flailing, the panicked splashes, the tilt of her head. He had seen it before in books, on television, and in real life. It was the sign of someone who was truly in danger. Others around the lake were distracted, chatting, playing, or taking pictures. No one else seemed to notice the severity of what was happening, but Daniel did. Without a second thought, Daniel dropped his bag and ran toward the water. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with determination. He didn't hesitate. He knew that in situations like this, hesitation could mean the difference between life and death. As he entered the water, he felt the resistance of the current against his legs. The water was cooler than he expected, but he focused only on reaching her. Emma had stopped calling out. The panic had begun to drain her energy, and the current was pulling her down. She didn't even realize Daniel was approaching. When he reached her, he grabbed her from behind, wrapping his arms securely around her. His presence was steady, firm, and reassuring, even if she couldn't see him clearly. Daniel pushed against the water with all his strength. Every stroke was a battle, not just with the current, but with time itself. He could feel her weight, the exhaustion in her body, and the way the water tried to pull them both under. He kept his focus on one thing, getting her to safety. Every second mattered. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Daniel reached the shallow part of the lake. He laid her gently on the sand, rolling her onto her side to help her breathe. Emma coughed, spitting out water, her chest heaving as she gasped for air. The fear and panic slowly began to fade, replaced by relief and the overwhelming reality that she was alive. Bystanders, who had not fully understood what was happening, now gathered around, amazed at what they had witnessed. Someone called emergency services while others stayed back, unsure how to help further. Daniel remained calm, holding Emma's hand, ensuring that she didn't move too quickly. His quick thinking and knowledge had saved her life. For Emma, the world seemed both brighter and quieter at the same time. She felt a mixture of gratitude, shock, and disbelief. She couldn't speak yet, but her eyes met Daniel's, and for the first time since entering the water, she felt safe. She had been so close to losing her life, and yet here she was, alive, breathing, and surrounded by people who would remember this moment forever. The lake, which had seemed so inviting just an hour ago, now felt different. Emma realized how quickly something ordinary could turn into a life-threatening situation. The beauty of the sunlit water had a new weight. It was a reminder that nature is powerful and unpredictable. But it was also a place of heroism and kindness, where one person's courage could change the course of another's life in an instant. As Emma recovered, she couldn't stop thinking about Daniel. She barely knew him, but he had acted when no one else had. His bravery had been quiet, unassuming, but life-saving. She realized that in those moments of true danger, people reveal their best selves, and Daniel had done exactly that. The lake returned to its calm state after a while, with children continuing to play and families enjoying the sun. But for Emma, the day would never be ordinary again. She had faced a moment that could have ended everything, and she had survived. And though she didn't fully understand it yet, she knew that her life had been changed forever. Daniel's heart pounded as he held Emma in the water. Every second felt like an hour. He could feel her weight, trembling and weak, and he knew he had to act fast. The current around them pulled at his legs and arms, trying to drag them under. He pushed with all his strength, kicking against the water, his arms cutting through the waves as he guided her toward the shore. Each movement was exhausting, but he refused to give up. Emma's mind was a haze of fear and confusion. She didn't know what was happening, only that she was no longer in control. The panic had been replaced by a strange numbness. She could barely move her arms, her body heavy with exhaustion. Then she felt someone grab her, firm, steady, and confident. Relief washed over her, but it was mixed with disbelief. Who was this person? How had he appeared so suddenly? She tried to speak, but her voice was weak, just a whisper swallowed by the water. Daniel ignored everything else around him. He focused only on her, using all the skills he had learned from years of swimming and being around water. He had learned early in life that in situations like this, hesitation could cost someone their life. He had seen drowning before in books, movies, and real life, and he knew the signs: flailing, gasping, the glassy, panicked eyes. Emma had all of them. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, determined to get her out of the water. The lake, which had seemed calm and inviting just moments ago, was now a force Daniel had to fight. Small waves slapped against his face, and the current tried to pull them away from the shore. He kicked harder, pushing his body against the resistance, moving inch by inch. Emma's head bobbed in the water, and he could feel her slipping at times, almost pulled under. But he held on tightly, making sure her face stayed above the water so she could breathe. Other people around the lake began to notice. Some were shouting, but their voices were distant, muffled by the sound of splashing water and Daniel's focus on keeping Emma alive. A few teenagers ran toward them, but the distance was too far and the waves were too strong. No one else could reach her in time. Daniel knew that if he hesitated for even a moment, it could be too late. He ignored the chaos and concentrated only on their path to safety. Emma, finally realizing that someone was helping her, felt a strange mix of fear and hope. She had thought she was going to die, but now, with Daniel holding her, she felt a glimmer of life again. Her mind was still cloudy, but she tried to cooperate, moving her arms slightly as he guided her. Each stroke felt like a battle, each second like a small victory. She realized how close she had been to losing everything, to the water that had seemed so playful and friendly earlier. Daniel's muscles burned with effort, but he refused to slow down. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his body, giving him strength he didn't know he had. He pushed through the fatigue, counting each stroke, each kick, each movement that brought them closer to the shore. He kept talking to Emma softly, quietly, so that she could hear him and not panic further. "It's okay. I've got you. You're going to be fine. Just hold on," he said, his voice calm and steady, almost like a lifeline. Emma couldn't respond. Her throat was dry and her lungs burned from the struggle, but the sound of his voice gave her comfort. She clung to him, trusting him completely, even though she barely knew him. In that moment, all fear mixed with gratitude. She realized that her life depended entirely on the courage and strength of a stranger. The current seemed endless, each step forward taking more effort than the last. Daniel could feel the pull of the water against him, but he refused to surrender. He remembered the lessons from his youth: always keep the person's head above water, stay calm, and move efficiently. Panic would only make things worse. He adjusted his grip, positioning Emma so that she floated more easily, and used his legs to push against the lake bed, inching them toward safety. Time stretched. Every movement required careful calculation. Daniel noticed how exhausted Emma had become, her arms barely moving, her body limp in his hold. The water around them seemed to resist them even more now, as if testing his determination. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. He had made a silent promise to her, that she would not die here, not today, not in this water. Finally, he felt the sand under his feet as he reached the shallow area near the shore. The water was no longer pulling them as strongly, and Daniel gently lowered Emma onto the wet sand. She coughed violently, spitting out water, her chest heaving as she tried to breathe. Each gasp was a miracle, a sign that she was still alive. Relief flooded Daniel, but he didn't relax yet. He carefully rolled her onto her side to help her breathe more easily. Around them, people had started to gather. Some were watching in awe, others calling for help on their phones. The scene that had been quiet and calm moments before was now filled with murmurs, concern, and astonishment. But Daniel remained focused on Emma. He checked her pulse, made sure she was breathing steadily, and kept her talking gently to prevent shock. Emma blinked, trying to take in her surroundings. She could see the crowd, but it felt distant, almost unreal. Her body shook from the cold and exhaustion. She tried to speak, her voice hoarse, but managed only a whisper. Thank you," she managed, her lips trembling. Daniel shook his head gently. "Don't thank me yet, just stay with me. You're going to be okay," he said, his voice reassuring. He stayed beside her, holding her hand, making sure she didn't feel alone. Emergency responders arrived a few minutes later, taking over with professional calm. They checked Emma thoroughly, making sure there were no hidden injuries. Daniel stepped back, finally allowing others to assist, but his eyes never left her. He had saved her from the water, but now he stayed to make sure she was truly safe. Emma was placed on a stretcher and carried to the emergency vehicle. She looked back at Daniel, still lying on the wet sand, soaked and tired, but smiling softly. She wanted to say more to thank him properly, but words failed her. She realized that her life had been saved by someone she barely knew, someone whose courage had given her another chance. Daniel watched as the ambulance drove away, feeling a mix of exhaustion and quiet satisfaction. He knew he had done something important, something meaningful. He had acted without thinking of reward or recognition. He had acted because it was the right thing to do, because someone's life depended on him. As the day went on, the lake returned to its calm, peaceful state. Children continued to play and families enjoyed the sunshine. But for Emma, the experience had changed everything. She had been so close to death, and now she was alive. She realized how fragile life could be and how quickly things could change. One moment of carelessness or one misstep in the water could have ended everything. Emma's mind replayed the events over and over. She thought about the panic, the fear, and then the relief. She thought about the stranger who had risked his own safety to save her. She knew she would never forget him or this moment. It was a life-changing experience, one that would shape her choices, her fears, and her appreciation for life from that day forward. Daniel, meanwhile, quietly packed his things and left the lake. He didn't seek praise or recognition. He returned home, knowing he had done something important, but refusing to make it a story about himself. For him, it was simply the right thing to do, an act of humanity in a world that sometimes needed courage to shine. The event became something that both would remember forever. For Emma, it was a brush with death that taught her gratitude, resilience, and the importance of staying calm in dangerous situations. For Daniel, it was a reminder that being aware, paying attention, and acting with courage could change someone's life in an instant. Days later, Emma would still feel the fear of that moment, but it was accompanied by a deep sense of awe and gratitude. She thought about the kindness of strangers, the unexpected heroes in ordinary life, and the value of paying attention to the world around her. She had learned a lesson that would stay with her forever. Life is precious, fragile, and sometimes survival depends on the courage of others. The story of that summer afternoon would remain with both Emma and Daniel forever. It was a story of fear, courage, and hope. It was a story of someone choosing to act when others hesitated. It was a reminder that heroes exist in everyday life, often unnoticed until the moment they are needed most. And for Emma, it was a story that began a journey of understanding life, human connection, and the power of courage. Emma woke up in a hospital room, the soft hum of machines and the quiet beeping of monitors surrounding her. Sunlight filtered gently through the blinds, painting warm patterns across the walls. For a moment she felt confused, unsure of where she was. Her body ached from the struggle in the lake, her muscles sore from fighting the current and clinging to life. She blinked slowly, her mind trying to process what had happened. The memory of the lake returned in fragments, the sudden pull of the water, the panic, the fear that had seemed all-consuming, and then the strong arms that had held her. She remembered gasping for air, feeling herself slipping beneath the waves, and then someone pulling her back, fighting the water as if it were nothing. Relief and disbelief washed over her. She was alive. She had survived. And she knew, even without seeing him yet, that someone had saved her life. A nurse entered quietly, checking her vitals and making notes. She smiled gently at Emma. "You're awake, that's good. You had a rough day yesterday, but you're going to be fine. You were very lucky." Emma tried to speak, but her throat was dry and her voice weak. Thank you," she managed to whisper. Her words were barely audible, but they carried the weight of her gratitude. The nurse nodded. "I'm sure the person who saved you didn't do it for thanks. But someone did act quickly. You're going to be okay now. Rest and drink some water. Your body needs it." Emma lay back, feeling the tension in her muscles slowly ease. Yet despite the comfort of the hospital and the care she was receiving, her mind kept returning to the man who had saved her, Daniel. Who was he? How had he known to act so quickly? She felt a strong desire to see him again, to thank him properly, even though she barely knew his name. Meanwhile, Daniel went about his life quietly. He had returned home after the lake incident, soaked and exhausted, but content. He didn't post anything on social media, didn't tell anyone at work, and didn't seek attention. To him, what he had done was simply the right thing. He had been in the right place at the right time, and he had acted. That was enough. Despite his humility, the story of his bravery began to spread. Someone at the lake had taken a video of the rescue. It showed Daniel diving into the water, reaching Emma and pulling her to safety. The video was shared online, and soon people in the town recognized him. News outlets picked up the story, praising the quiet hero who had saved a young woman's life. Daniel's name was mentioned, but he remained modest. He insisted he had just done what anyone would do, brushing off the attention. Back in the hospital, Emma's friends came to visit. They had been shaken by the incident, worried that she might not make it. They brought flowers, cards, and snacks, trying to lighten the mood and lift her spirits. Emma smiled weakly, grateful for their support. I was so scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I thought I wouldn't make it." Her friends held her hand and nodded. "You're okay now, that's what matters. You're alive, that's what counts." Emma's recovery was slow but steady. The doctors monitored her breathing and heart rate, and each day she regained more strength. She thought about how fragile life was, how quickly something ordinary could turn dangerous. She remembered the panic in her own eyes, the helplessness of being pulled under by the water, and the relief she had felt when Daniel reached her. She began to understand the full significance of what had happened. Someone had risked their own safety to save her life. Someone had seen her in danger when no one else had. Someone had acted with courage, strength, and determination. And she had been given a second chance because of it. During her stay, she learned more about Daniel from the news. She discovered his humble nature, how he didn't want recognition, and how he insisted he just happened to be there. Yet for Emma, that modesty made him even more remarkable. He hadn't acted for fame or reward. He had acted simply because it was the right thing to do. As the days passed, Emma's emotions shifted between relief, gratitude, and admiration. She thought about how different her life could have been if Daniel hadn't been there. How different her future would have been if she had never breathed again after that terrifying moment in the water. She realized that courage sometimes appears quietly, in ordinary people who choose to act when no one else does. The community also felt the impact of the event. Local residents praised Daniel for his bravery, and many were inspired by the story. Teachers told students about it as an example of courage and quick thinking. Parents used it to remind children about water safety. The incident became more than just a rescue. It became a lesson in attentiveness, compassion, and bravery. Emma's family visited her daily. They held her hand, listened to her story, and expressed their immense gratitude toward Daniel. "We don't even know him, and yet he saved you," her mother said, tears in her eyes. "We owe him everything." Emma nodded, thinking about the man who had risked his strength and time to save a stranger. "I want to thank him properly," she whispered. "Not just once, but in a way he'll never forget. He saved my life." Even as she recovered, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this experience had changed her fundamentally. She had always been careful, but now she understood what it meant to truly value life, to appreciate the people around her, and to recognize the hidden heroes in the world. She had been given a gift, a chance to live again, and she felt a responsibility to make the most of it. Daniel, on the other hand, continued to live quietly. He returned to work, spending his days on construction sites and evenings at home. He didn't share the story with anyone outside of his family, who were proud but unsurprised by his actions. His father, who had always taught him to help others whenever he could, said simply, "You did what anyone with a good heart would do. That's all that matters." Despite his modesty, Daniel felt the satisfaction of knowing he had changed a life. There was no reward, no fame that mattered. The real reward was the knowledge that Emma was alive and safe. That alone was enough to fill him with a sense of purpose. Weeks passed, and Emma was finally able to leave the hospital. She walked out with a new appreciation for life. The world seemed brighter, more vibrant, more precious. Every breath, every step, every smile felt more significant. She had faced death and she had survived. She owed it all to Daniel. Her friends and family accompanied her home, ensuring she was safe and comfortable. Emma felt a deep sense of gratitude and a desire to honor the courage that had saved her. She began to think about ways she could prevent something similar from happening to others, ways she could help educate people about the dangers of water, and ways she could acknowledge Daniel's bravery. Emma reached out to the local authorities to find out how to contact Daniel. She wanted to thank him in person to express the depth of her gratitude. When she finally met him, she realized that heroism often comes in quiet, unassuming forms. Daniel was humble, modest, and kind. He didn't seek attention and he didn't expect thanks. Yet he had saved her life. Their meeting was emotional. Emma could hardly find words to express the gratitude she felt. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You saved my life. I don't even know what I would have done without you." Daniel shook his head, smiling gently. "You don't have to thank me. I was just there. I did what anyone should do. You're alive, that's all that matters." Emma realized that while words were important, actions meant more. Daniel had acted when others hesitated. He had been brave when it mattered most, and he had done so without expectation of reward or recognition. The story of Emma and Daniel continued to inspire those around them. People spoke of courage, quick thinking, and the importance of helping others in times of need. It became more than just a personal story. It became a lesson in humanity. For Emma, it was a reminder that life was fragile, precious, and worth cherishing. For Daniel, it was a quiet confirmation that courage and compassion often go hand in hand. Emma returned to her life with a renewed sense of purpose. She focused on her studies, her family, and her friends with a new appreciation. She also became involved in local water safety programs, sharing her story to help educate others about the dangers of drowning and the importance of awareness and preparation. The days that followed were not easy. Emma still felt the lingering fear from the lake, the memory of being powerless in the water. But with Daniel's help and the support of her loved ones, she learned to cope. She grew stronger, both physically and emotionally. She knew that life could be unpredictable, but she also knew that bravery and compassion could make a difference. Daniel, meanwhile, remained the quiet hero. He never boasted, never asked for recognition, and never expected thanks beyond Emma's simple, heartfelt gratitude. His actions reminded everyone who knew the story that heroism doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the right place at the right time, with a willing heart. As the months passed, Emma often reflected on that summer day at Lake Willow. She remembered the fear, the panic, and the relief. She remembered the man who had risked his own safety to save her. She realized that the world was full of ordinary people capable of extraordinary acts, people who chose courage over indifference, action over hesitation. And for both Emma and Daniel, the story became a bond, a shared moment of life, fear, bravery, and gratitude. A single day had changed everything, leaving a lasting impact that neither would ever forget. The memory of the water pulling her under, the panic, the fear of losing her life, and then the firm, steady hands of Daniel Ray's saving her replayed in her mind almost every night. It was a memory that brought both gratitude and reflection. She had survived a near-death experience, and she knew her life would never be the same. Emma had returned to her routine, university classes, assignments, and part-time work, but everything felt different. Small problems that used to bother her now seemed trivial. She focused more on the people around her, cherishing moments with family and friends. She smiled more easily, laughed more freely, and appreciated the simple pleasures of life that she had often overlooked before. She had a new sense of purpose, and part of that purpose was honoring the second chance she had been given. Her gratitude toward Daniel never faded. She thought about him constantly, the quiet hero who had acted without hesitation, the stranger who had risked his strength and time to save a life. She wanted to meet him again, not just to say thank you, but to show him the impact his actions had made. She reached out to local authorities and the hospital to find a way to contact him. After a few attempts, she finally arranged a meeting. When she saw Daniel again, it was as if time had slowed. He looked just as humble and unassuming as she remembered. There was no bravado in his eyes, only a quiet strength and kindness that seemed natural. Emma approached him, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Daniel," she said softly, "I wanted to thank you again, properly this time. You saved my life." "I don't know how I can ever repay you." Daniel smiled gently, his hands in his pockets. "You don't need to repay me. I was there and I did what anyone should do. You're alive, that's enough for me." Emma shook her head. "No, it's more than enough, but it's not just that. You changed my life. You made me realize what really matters. I want to live in a way that honors that. I want to make a difference because of what you did." For Daniel, her words were both humbling and moving. He had acted without expectation, yet hearing how deeply his actions had affected someone reinforced the quiet heroism of everyday choices. He realized that even a single moment of courage could have ripple effects far beyond what anyone could imagine. Over the following weeks, Emma began to take concrete steps to make a difference. She joined a local water safety program, volunteering her time to educate others about the dangers of lakes, rivers, and pools. She shared her story with students at schools, community groups, and local events. She emphasized the importance of awareness, preparation, and paying attention to the signs of distress in water. Each time she spoke, she felt the weight of that summer day, but she also felt pride in helping prevent accidents like hers. Daniel, meanwhile, continued his life quietly. He returned to work as a construction worker, helping build homes and structures with the same care and dedication he had shown at the lake. He didn't seek recognition, but he occasionally watched from a distance as Emma shared her story, seeing the impact ripple through the community. He realized that courage and kindness could inspire others in ways he never expected. The town, too, began to feel the ripple effect of that one summer day. Teachers incorporated water safety lessons into school curricula. Parents became more vigilant when children were near water. The story of Emma and Daniel became a symbol of courage, vigilance, and humanity. People realized that heroes often walk among them, quiet and ordinary, yet capable of extraordinary acts when the moment calls for it. Emma's life changed in other ways as well. She grew closer to her family, appreciating their presence and support more than ever. She spent more time with friends, understanding that relationships were precious and time spent together was irreplaceable. She also took swimming lessons, determined to never feel helpless in the water again. Every stroke she learned felt like a tribute to the man who had saved her life. One afternoon, Emma invited Daniel to a small community event at the lake, the very lake where her life had been saved. Children were learning to swim safely, parents were watching attentively, and volunteers shared information about water safety. Emma approached Daniel, who had been watching quietly from a distance, and smiled. "This is what I wanted to show you," she said. "Your actions inspired all of this. You saved my life, and now so many people are safer because of you." Daniel looked around, seeing the children splashing safely in the water under supervision, the families listening attentively, and the volunteers guiding them. He felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of fulfillment that couldn't be measured by fame or recognition. He realized that heroism wasn't about glory, it was about making a difference, no matter how small it seemed at the time. Emma and Daniel spent the afternoon talking, sharing stories, and reflecting on how one single day had changed both of their lives. They laughed, shared memories, and even discussed future plans for more safety initiatives. Their friendship grew, built on trust, gratitude, and a shared understanding of life's fragility. The experience also changed the way Emma viewed herself. She realized that surviving such a near-death experience was not just about luck, it was about perspective. She understood courage, resilience, and the value of paying attention to the world around her. She began to live more intentionally, focusing on goals that mattered, relationships that nurtured her, and opportunities to help others. She carried Daniel's bravery as a reminder that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they chose to act. Daniel, for his part, remained humble. He never sought fame or recognition, though he occasionally received letters and messages from people inspired by the story. He accepted the praise quietly, always redirecting it to Emma and the importance of water safety awareness. To him, the real reward was knowing that lives could be saved, awareness could be raised, and courage could inspire others. As time passed, Emma's health and strength returned fully. She thrived in her studies and her volunteer work, finding a sense of purpose she had never felt before. She became a mentor to younger students, encouraging them to pursue their goals while being aware of the risks and challenges of life. She told her story often, emphasizing not just the danger she faced, but the importance of courage, attentiveness, and kindness. The lake remained a symbol for both Emma and Daniel. It was a reminder of fear, struggle, and ultimate triumph. Every visit to the lake brought memories of that day, of panic, relief, gratitude, and courage. But it also brought a sense of calm and purpose, a recognition that life was precious and every moment mattered. Their story continued to inspire others. People shared it online, in classrooms, at community events, and even in small family gatherings. It reminded everyone that heroism could exist in ordinary places, in ordinary people. It reminded them that courage, kindness, and quick thinking could save lives and change the world, one act at a time. Emma and Daniel's bond grew stronger over time. Though their lives were different, one a student, one a construction worker, they found common ground in the shared experience of that day. They met regularly, not just to reminisce, but to plan new ways to educate the community and support water safety programs. Their friendship was based on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the understanding that a single act of courage could create ripples far beyond what anyone could imagine. For Emma, the near drowning had been a turning point. She had learned to appreciate life more deeply, to face challenges with resilience, and to understand the true meaning of gratitude. For Daniel, it had been a confirmation of the power of quiet courage, attentiveness, and the human instinct to help others in need. Years later, Emma would often recall that summer afternoon at Lake Willow. She would think about the panic, the fear, and the overwhelming relief of being saved. She would think about the man who had acted when it mattered most, whose courage had allowed her to live. And she would smile, knowing that her life had been forever changed for the better. Daniel, too, would remember that day with humility and quiet pride. He had acted without expectation, yet his actions had created a lasting impact. He had saved a life, inspired a community, and strengthened the understanding that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. Their story became a lasting reminder. Life is fragile, moments of danger are unpredictable, and courage can come from the most ordinary of people. One person's quick thinking, selflessness, and bravery can ripple outward, touching countless lives in ways that may never be fully seen. Emma continued to live her life intentionally, always remembering the value of each moment. She treasured her family, her friends, and the opportunities she had been given. She thrived in her studies and volunteer work, sharing her story to educate, inspire, and empower others. Daniel continued to live simply, quietly, and purposefully. He returned to his work, helped others whenever he could, and carried the memory of that summer day as a reminder of human potential and courage. In the end, their story was not just about a rescue. It was about bravery, gratitude, and the ripple effect of human kindness. It was about recognizing the importance of paying attention, acting decisively, and caring for others in moments that matter most. It was about the extraordinary power that exists in ordinary people, and the way one moment of courage can forever change the course of a life. And so the summer day at Lake Willow became more than just a memory. It became a symbol of survival, of humanity, and of the quiet heroes among us all. Emma and Daniel's lives were forever intertwined, bound by a shared experience, gratitude, and the understanding that courage can create ripples far beyond imagination. Whenever Emma thought of that day, she smiled. She had survived, she had learned, and she had been inspired to live fully and purposefully. And she knew that somewhere, quietly, Daniel lived knowing that he had made a difference. That was enough. That was everything.